Try It Out Loud, a podcast by Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
This week's podcast episode is called Living with Less Layers, and it is with Dani Wade. And thank you so much, Dani, for joining us. She is an infertility survivor who has been sharing her journey to crack the stigma around infertility journeys, her experiencing fertility loss, and what life is truly like as a long hauler. She's a licensed therapist, social worker, and an entrepreneur with a social media marketing business. Welcome, Dani.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Absolutely. Well, we couldn't be more excited either. And, just to hear your story and, for our listeners who may not know who you are, I would love for you to share your story, your journey, and about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's been a long journey. My husband and I actually got married in 2016, and we were very much on the same page. Like, we're going to live our lives, really enjoy like the engagement period, the marriage, like early newlywed period, and just do as much as we could before we decided to start trying to grow our family. And so we were big travelers. We like to do cosplay and go to like Comic-Cons and expos and things like that, so we really were just like living our best lives, enjoying each other's company and traveling the world and just really like pursuing our careers and growing in that way. Like, my husband got his master's degree early on while we were like engaged right before we got married, and then carrying over to that first year of marriage. And that's when we decided we were going to move to Colorado. We're like, all right, your career is on path. Mine, I can get a social work job anywhere we go. Let's move. And so we moved to Colorado from Chicago.
Wow.
And we were like, we're going to buy a house, and we're going to buy a big one because we're going to fill it with a couple kids, and that's going to be our forever house. So we, spent the first year in Denver doing the whole like no kids, living our lives, explore Denver thing. And then we bought a house, and we were like, all right, 2018, let's start, we're going to get pregnant right away anyway. No big deal.
Right.
As everybody assumes, right?
Oh my goodness, that's the truth. Yeah.
I legit thought, well, and the crazy thing is I actually went to see an OBGYN in Colorado early on when we moved here, because I was like, I was already doing family planning with my practitioner in Chicago. And I was like, okay, I'm going to see somebody else here and just let them know, like, I've already talked about this, but I just want to do a little more family planning and make sure I'm prepared. And she literally comes in, she's pregnant, and she's like, don't stop birth control until you're ready to get pregnant literally the next day, because that's how fast it can happen. And I was like, okay, like that literally scared me, because I was like, oh no, if I stop too soon, like we might get pregnant before we're ready, you know?
Yeah.
So in 2018, we were like ready. I was like, all right, I'm stopping my birth control and we're just gonna get pregnant. That was not the reality at all. So we've had a long journey since then, given we're in 2024 and still don't have children. But we really did, do all the things I was learning as we went, getting started and like just stop birth control if I was gonna get pregnant. And then after a while I was like, what else am I supposed to do? Googling, track your ovulation. Oh yeah, there's a such thing as ovulation. It takes ovulation to get pregnant. Like, I was literally learning the female reproductive health and the process of trying to have a baby while we were actively trying to have a baby. It's wild, the things we don't know until we're actively trying to achieve growing our families.
Yes. Absolutely.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, like ovulation occurs, middle of your cycle. Things that just like I don't remember learning or really retaining because it never pertained to my situation.
Yeah, and why would we, right?
Right? Yeah, especially when you're on birth control. You're like, it's doing its job. I'm not going to get pregnant, and that's the whole goal, right? Regulate my cycles and don't get pregnant. So I never had an issue. My cycles were normal, things like that. But yeah, so I would say, we've been through a lot, and that's where my whole social media comes in, because I was already doing fashion and beauty blogging and Instagram like influencer work
Yeah.
for a few years before I pivoted towards talking about my journey, because almost a year into trying to conceive, I was on medicated cycles and I was struggling, and I was going to work and I was extremely emotional. And my coworker and friend at the time was like, do you have anybody to talk to about this stuff? I was like, no, you're the person. Like, you guys, you know, I'm talking about it here at work. And they're just like, yeah, but like, there's got to be other people going through this. And you have a blog. Like, why don't you blog about it and see like if other people pop up saying, oh, I know what you're going through. Like, you know, and I was like, that's pretty genius.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I could do that. And of course, it's very vulnerable, but like, I went straight in. I was like, all right, I'm going to start talking about this and just see what happens, you know, search hashtags, see who else is going through it, start the conversation. And ever since, I've just been sharing more and more with the community and social media. And it's been super helpful.
Yeah. I know. It really is because, I mean, it makes you feel seen and heard with the community of people who are also living it, even though we're all, experiencing something different, all have different stories. We're all in the same staircase, just different colors. And, when you become part of this lost community, and it really is so beautiful to get in a room or to be around people who get it. And I don't have to overly explain myself in a society where we have to all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. To have people not constantly questioning if you're doing enough, because I think people who don't understand what it takes to go through fertility treatments, when they start asking some of the most mundane, basic stuff, where you're just like, don't you think I would have learned that by now? I've
Yes.
Googled everything I can. I have popped in every like website that talks about medical things and asked all the questions of the doctors and poked the community, the people who actually know what this stuff is about. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I would
Like,
say I've done that.
yes, that's exactly right. I know. And they make it, seem so easy too. When those conversations come, like, just go do this or just go do that. And it's like, okay, well, like, back up a little bit. Like, I've already been trying and thinking about these things. And if you didn't think that me or my partner have talked about this, then I mean, come on.
Yeah,
Like, and like they think
seriously.
that they're coming to you with an epiphany, and you're
Yeah.
like, this is like the 100th time that I've even talked about this topic and not to you. Like, you know? Yeah, it's
So
like,
true. Everybody thinks they have like the magic answer. And just like, no, trust me, you won't. And like,
yeah.
not that I think that doctors are the end all be all, but I will say when you see enough doctors about a topic, you really do, and you self educate. Like,
Yes.
if there's something else we need to explore, I'm pretty sure my doctor's going to come up with something
Yes.
before an ordinary, like non infertile person will come up with. You know, it's just like, yeah,
100%. And it really is like we become those subject matter experts on infertility, when we live it. And we're learning all the things, we're going along, and we do have plans in place with doctors and things like that. But it is really that education to advocate for yourself.
yeah.
Done it. Do Google deep dives keep me up at night? It's those kind of things. It's true.
And you have to. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, a lot of what I learned in our journey, because we did medicated cycles, we did IUIs, and we did IVF. So we did the three main
Yeah.
courses of treatment that are recommended when you're dealing with infertility. And a lot of what I had to learn, I learned along the way.
Yeah.
And I also was able to tap into the community because I made a lot of really good connections on Instagram, and even TikTok, but mostly Instagram, where people were DMing all the time and were like, hey, when you went in, did you ask these questions? What kind of questions did you ask? I need some notes. Or did you try this? Did you ask about this medication? Here's something I did that I found helpful, or here's what I did and I didn't find helpful. Just like things that maybe you don't know or didn't consider that help you drive conversations with your providers. I find that super helpful because I think that unless you've been through it, you don't necessarily know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And I think that when people have been through it and they're willing to pass on that knowledge, which is what I'm big on doing now that I've been through it, it's priceless. It's
Yes.
priceless because there's some things that like I would just sit down and just be like, okay, my doctor said all these things, and I would just take their word for it. And then when I would have conversations with other people who've been through it and they like kind of challenge a few of the things,
Yeah.
or fill in some of the gaps, I'm like, oh wow, okay, now I know what to go back with. And these are
Yeah.
things that I need to look for and ask about. And because you don't know until you do present that information. I think people are intimidated by medical providers a lot of times, but as someone who has worked with doctors on the professional side, now being
Right.
a patient, I bring that fierce advocacy like I do for people when I'm working for patients to the doctors,
Yes.
I do that for myself because it's so important. And sometimes I would get nervous myself too, but like I know I'm just as deserving as information and, quality treatment and all the opportunities as possible as the next person. So I need to make sure I present myself that way. Like we're not going to keep doing the same thing and ask and expect a different result. We're going to challenge this. We're going to try something different. I'm going to ask you, what other tests do we need to try? What haven't we tried? Can I try this medication? And the worst they can say is no. But when they
Right.
say no, they need to give you a reason. And that's what I challenge a lot with people is like, if they say no, they need to tell you why. It needs to be very specific to your case, not just
Yeah.
a general no.
Yes. And Danny, that is so spot on because each case is so different. So it's always good because, you have those people, well, did you inquire about this? Did you hear this? Did you ask this? And it's like, well, Monday quarterback, like I literally, and it's not that they're not trying, it's amazing, but it's like, if we can go in there more prepared to be able to ask those questions and then just to follow up with the whys, because there could be a great reason. And if there isn't, okay, well, let's explore this then. Or can you find out more information so we can have this follow-up conversation next time I see you? And it is
Mhm.
because that's their job. Like their job is there to take care of us and to help with our goals and things like that. And it's so
Mhm.
spot on, Danny. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for, just sharing like your story and, everything that you guys have been, going through. And like, what was some of like the hardest things that you didn't expect with being on this journey?
The emotional toll, the
Yes.
extreme emotional highs and lows, I think in life you go through highs and lows, right? But it's
Yes.
nothing compared to when you are dealing with, if you're actively in treatment and you're in this course for so long and it's consistent. It's like
Yeah.
you don't really get a break from the emotional roller coaster when you're actively in treatment. You have moments where you break through, where you're like, okay, I'm a little more hopeful and I can like relax a little bit because I have this part of the answer, or I've done this part and that's supposed to be the hardest part, right? But
Right.
it's always constantly questioning everything you're doing and everything you're going through. You want to, in the beginning, you do kind of just say, okay, like I've never done this, so I don't know any different. So you kind of sit back and you're just like, okay, they told me to do this, I do this. Great. This is what we got from it. Cool. And you just kind of go through the motions. But the more
Right.
you're in it and you learn, I feel like you become much more alert to
Yes.
everything and
Yes.
aware. And you start questioning and you start doubting and you start just feeling overwhelmed by the fear. You gain fear through the process,
Yes.
because you know what it's like when you do have a failure, you know what that feels like. And then you're anticipating, what if that happens again?
Ugh.
And I don't feel like anybody really talked to me about that. I hadn't known anybody early on who had gone through IVF.
Yeah.
I didn't start meeting people who had gone through IVF until I was actively in it and start talking about that more and more. So I was kind of navigating all that on my own, and the waiting, the anxiety,
Oof.
the the constant like questioning of your own faith, just
Yes.
all of that. And I feel like there's no specific way to prepare for it, but I do think that conversations around it really do help. Of
Yes.
like, it's normal that
Yes.
you might feel this way.
Yeah.
It's okay if you do have doubt, if you do start having negative thinking, because everybody's like, think positive, think positive. You're gonna get pregnant if you think positive. Like, no. If it were that easy, I would have been pregnant like literally the first day I stopped birth control because I was so ready. I was like, I'm gonna get
Yes.
pregnant.
Yeah.
No doubts whatsoever. But the
Right.
reality is, it's not always that simple. It's not always that easy. That's not everybody's journey. And when you have gone through something super difficult and you've navigated it in a way where you've come out the other side and you've survived, you do want to teach those coping skills to other people, because
Exactly.
you know what it felt like to go through it. And you're like, I want to help you hopefully get
Yes.
through it a little smoother and a little less stressed or a little less depressed or a little less anxious, or at least understand that if you do get to feeling that way, there is another way through it, you know?
Yes.
So yeah, that was the most surprising, was just like the
Yeah.
emotional roller coaster.
And you're so right. And it's like those feelings of like guilt, shame, and blame that come associated with this. And it's because of, from being a little person, we're told, oh, you're going to be able to one day have your own kids, and, you're going to get pregnant, like, because they scare you, right? Like, they're like, okay, use protection, use protection, use protection. You're going to get pregnant. And so you're like, oh my goodness, like, we're definitely going to get pregnant. Like, this always happens. And then when it doesn't, it's like, is there something wrong with me? And then, like, battling those feelings, with your body and stuff like that. And what's wrong with me?
Hmm.
It's so hard. And it takes such a toll on you.
And then you question yourself. You're like, am I weak?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I thought I was stronger than this. And like, I
Right.
thought I was more resilient. I thought I could bounce back from these things. I've bounced back from worse, as you think,
Yes.
that it's been worse before. And I just feel like, I think also growing up, you're told you can do anything, right? Especially girls.
Right.
We're like
Right.
really pumped up. You can do anything. You can achieve anything. You can have family. You
Put
can
your
have
mind to it.
career,
Right.
right? Just put your mind to it. Just stay the course. Work
Yes.
hard. It'll pay off. And then you translate that into your journey of trying to get pregnant and have a child. But it doesn't translate like that. The amount of effort and work you put in does not always equate the result and the payoff that you're pretty much promised
Right.
or encouraged that you would get in the end.
Right.
And so it's really hard to reconcile that difference and to really step back and be like, okay, life doesn't actually work that way in every case.
Yes.
It's scary, like, to be an adult and realize that, like, not everything that you work towards comes out the way that you want or that
Right.
you thought would come out, by putting the work in. So, yeah.
Exactly. And coming to terms with that is so difficult. And especially on this journey, there's so many uncertainties, it's like almost like being on like a rat wheel, just like keep going, hamster wheel, just keep going round and round and round. It's like, No, I appreciate you sharing about that emotional toll, because it isn't talked about.
Mhm.
Unless you find the communities on Instagram or, other places and things like that. So absolutely, Danny. Oh my goodness. And, how did you and your husband really like just stay stronger together being a long hauler on this journey?
Yeah, early on, it didn't really connect that we needed to do anything different.
Right. Right.
I do realize that our relationship is special in a way that we actually enjoy spending time together. So it's natural for us to be doing a lot together on a regular basis, and I realize not all couples are like that. Sometimes it is more like you have very separate interests. And so you do things separately, and then you kind of have to come together every now and then for whatever may be. But for us, like, a lot of what we do, we enjoy doing the same things and we do it together. And so we were already spending a lot of time together.
Yeah.
But as things got more and more challenging, we had to be more intentional about what we were doing when we were together, to
Yeah.
just ensure that we weren't kind of just fading into just like sadness, because failed cycle after failed cycle,
Yes.
loss after loss, right? Um, and because there were times where I think back and I'm like, I think we didn't like get out the house except to grocery shop. It would be like we were just kind of isolating ourselves from other people. And so we had to be intentional about like doing things outside the house
Yeah.
and, connecting with other people, doing double dates and, getting out during the day when the sun is shining and,
Yeah.
just little things like that. And communication, we pride ourselves on our communication. We've always had to work towards being better at our communication, because you don't know you have a problem with communicating until you hit that moment and you're just like, I didn't like what you said. I didn't like the way you said it. And now I'm mad. Now you're mad and all these things, and you're working through it. But when it comes to infertility and especially loss and deciding what your goals are, you're challenged with questions that you never would have to discuss in marriage if
Yeah.
you didn't experience infertility or experience loss. And we had to be much more vulnerable in a way that we hadn't had to be before, with our emotions about what we were feeling and how we felt after we got the call that our embryo didn't implant, or we got the call that we were having a chemical pregnancy, or the call that, or when we were physically in the office being told that we didn't have heartbeats, our twins didn't have heartbeats. You know, no two people generally cope exactly the same, especially in a relationship.
Right.
And so we had to have conversations of like, you know, he was worried about me. And I think that's genuinely how partners are with others. Like when they feel like the other person is carrying more of the weight of something terrible, they are like, let me be strong for you because you need to
Yes.
process this. But I would challenge him back and say, you also are going through this. This is your loss too. I don't want you to feel like I'm not here for what you need, that you can't tell me how you feel, that you
Wow.
can't process this, you know, in however you need to. If you need to cry, if you need to scream, if you, whatever it may be, I want you to not hold that back. Just because I'm the one outwardly crying and screaming and angry right now.
Yeah.
And that I think was helpful because I do feel like also when you have a male partner, males are taught to process things so much differently than women are, right? We're
Right.
told it's okay to embrace your feelings and to express your feelings and that it's healthy. And a lot of times males are raised to be tough and hold that
Yes.
stuff in. That's a girl thing to do if you want to cry or if you want to be
Right.
sad or whatever it may be. And so creating safe spaces for each other was very important, and feeling like we could grieve the way we need to grieve and still have each other, not push each other away, was super important. And I think that really helped us because I do get DMs from couples, from individuals who are in a couple who don't get that from their relationship. And they're asking, like, how did you navigate this? Do you have any advice or tips? And I'd be as honest as possible with them about, like, here are different approaches. If you haven't tried this, try this, you know?
Yeah.
Whether it's sitting down and saying, let's turn off our phones for a few minutes and really just, I want to have a conversation and we not shame each other. We don't have to feel embarrassed. Like I want us to just be open, whatever it may be. There's different ways you can approach it to try to make sure that each side feels heard and
Yes.
feels like they're getting their due respect in the grieving process if you're experiencing a loss, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've shared about this before on the podcast, just about, my husband and I did grieve so differently, like you're saying, like, those two types of grievers. I'm sure, people can be blended or be one day and one the other, but I was definitely more the processor, need to sit with it, cry, like feel my feels and stuff. And my husband was the one that needed to continue to move forward and stay busy and do things. And it really did take a toll on us where, it took us a couple months to really realize that we both were grieving differently. I was feeling so lonely and isolating in my journey when I knew he was there, but it was like, I didn't want to keep bringing it up, or he didn't want to keep bringing it up, all those things. And finally we were able to come together and really, figure it out together. But it really is, Dani, it is, it's just so heartbreaking to see when couples do fall apart after this.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to
Yeah.
watch each other be in pain. And it's hard
Yes.
to know what to say. And I always say it's not about being perfect in what you say. It's about
Right.
just getting started and talking about it. You're going
Yes.
to learn better things to say as you say it, even if it's the wrong things. Let your partner tell you that
Yes.
doesn't help.
Yes.
You know, when you say things like that, it doesn't make me feel better. It actually makes me feel worse. Great. Now I know not to say that type of thing anymore. Right?
Yes.
You got to,
Yes.
if you don't say that, you don't know. And so you're
No.
tiptoeing around each other and then you're
Yes.
more and more distant. And then it just makes you feel more and more lonely. And I think that, people, it's uncomfortable, but
Yes.
it's a worthwhile uncomfort to go through so that you can get through it together rather than
Yes.
feeling like when you come out the other side that you don't
Right.
even know who your partner is anymore. Like they're not there.
Exactly. And then you start building resentments, and then you know how that goes. And it really is. It's like, this is our baby together. Like this is our child. So, or children, and it really is like, okay, us staying together in this because we both feel it differently. You're right.
And I think that's another thing partners need to have conversations about this stuff before they start having babies
Yeah.
of, what does our relationship mean on its own? And is it enough whether or not we have children? Because
Right.
that is something we talked about and we didn't really have to talk about it as much until we started fertility treatment. It was, I think, probably between our medicated cycles and our IUI, we were deciding like, do we want to take the next step? Because we knew IUI was the next step. And we talked about, like if these things don't work, how far are we willing to go? And of course, how far you're willing to go can change.
Yeah.
We never thought we would do IVF, and that changed. But again, because we were talking about it, it was a natural progression rather than being completely blindsided. Like, I can't believe you want to do that. I don't want to do that, But also talking about, like, if we end this and we don't have children, is that okay? Like, do we feel like our relationship can make it? And for us, it was an easy yes. Like, being married to each other is fun. We enjoy each other. So whether or not there's kids involved, we're still good, And that was very important for us before we even started, the more intense treatments, because we knew that it could easily break up our relationship if you're not on the same page.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to hear that, Dani. And yeah, thanks for sharing that for the listeners to hear too. It's so true. And what were some ways, that you also took care of yourself? Like you personally doing your self-care and things like that in the journey to make sure you're staying true to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, definitely taking time for myself, doing things that I enjoy on my own or with friends or with family. Again, my husband and I spend a lot of time together, but he's totally fine with it. I'm like, I'm going to go get my nails done.
Yes.
I'm going to go get a facial. I'm going to go hang out with my girl. We're going to hang out at our house, or we're going to go get brunch or whatever it may be. Just doing things that made me feel good and made me know. I knew there's certain people I know when I hang out with them, I'm gonna be laughing.
Yeah.
We're going to be telling stories. We're going to be joking. We're going to be shopping, which is one of my favorite things to do, whether or not I have the money for it. Just like that type of stuff, like being able to fit the things in, again, that make me feel like me. Because you don't feel like yourself or that you have control of your body when you're actively taking injections or, after our loss, going weekly for HCG draws.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. It's miserable, and you just feel like your body's not your own, and then your body is failing you constantly. And so, yeah, being able to be like, do things that, like, okay, I own my, who I am, I like having my nails done. I like, getting my hair done. I like being able to make myself feel good by pampering myself. And so I make sure I fit those into my schedule and spend time with people who aren't going to just focus on all of the things I'm going through. We're going to talk about some other stuff that's going to, kind of carry beyond the world of IVF and whatever it may be. So those things really, really helped.
Yeah. And I think those hard block offs, like, this is where I'm taking the time and getting my nails done. Like, I'm making an appointment, I'm keeping it, I'm not going to make excuses, and it really does come down to that, that we are making sure that we're making our mental health a priority by doing self-care and doing what makes us happy, outside, like you said, the all consuming world of it. And it really is like, really you feel like you're wearing so many layers, like, and once you can start shedding those and really being your true authentic self and really making sure that you're focusing on your spouse, your couple, like, and then also, other things outside of that, it's just so important because you can, like, I feel like I could become a hermit at times and just completely stay in our little hut and that's it. Just keep me there.
Yeah. And there's certain phases where they tell you, like, if you're on certain medications, you are more vulnerable to getting sick. Your immune system is down. And so you do naturally start to stay inside more often and isolate from other people. And just because you want to give yourself the best chance of success. But, just being cognizant of that and reminding yourself that, like, there is life outside of treatment. There's life outside of infertility, and that you deserve to still have joyous moments. And it doesn't always have to be something big. I love big things. I love traveling. Like, while we were in treatment, trying to fit in travel, but it's hard when you're spending all your money on treatment. So then when we had our miscarriage and we were taking a break, taking a huge trip was like, it was amazing. It didn't feel like running away. It did feel like an escape, but it didn't feel like running away because it was like, we're tapping back into things that we've always loved doing.
Yeah.
We just didn't get to do it as much because we were 100% committed to the idea of getting pregnant through IVF. And what if we're pregnant at this point? And what if this works? And what if they want to schedule stims? We don't want to push it back. This is our number one priority. And so, yeah, like getting back to things that you were already doing, it doesn't have to feel like this grand gesture. Like, to me, taking a big trip isn't a grand gesture because it's something that we enjoyed doing before. And now it's a reward that we get to do it again.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I just feel like, you don't have to feel bad about indulging outside of treatment.
Right. And And that's so spot on too, being sure that you're investing not just in, treatments and things like that, but in yourselves and giving you guys what you need and keep recharging your batteries so you can continue. Because if not, I mean, it's really hard to continue on a path if you're just feeling drained all the time, and
Mhm.
not getting any little charges to keep you going.
Exactly. Exactly.
No. Oh, well, thank you so much, Dani. I can't thank you enough for being on here, for sharing, your journey, things that you do, things that, you and your hubby do during your, this journey and what you continue to do. So I can't thank you enough for sharing your story for our listeners.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to chat and to connect with people. If anybody wants to reach out to me on Instagram, I'm at DW Bella. I'm always in my DMs chatting with fertility warriors and learning each other's stories and kind of supporting each other through the
Yes.
process because
Yes.
nobody should be doing this alone.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. So thank you so much, Dani. And yeah, for anybody that's looking to connect, we'll add Dani's contact info. And then also, if you're looking for, daily support groups, mentorship, therapy, anything like that, reach out to us on our website, chasingtherainbows.org. We can get you connected to all of our free services. But until next time, please tune in for our next episode. Subscribe to our podcast to help us reach more loss survivors. But until next time, infertility, pregnancy loss, and infant loss survivors, we're always with you. Thanks again, Dani.